but I've just drawn out some of the key things that I think are important to consider around nutrition and our emotional health and well-being, and what can be done in the workplace as well. So you might be thinking, well, why is this linked to workplace? But it's about a responsibility as employers or team leads to really think about how are we supposed to, there's so much in the news about mental health and supporting people and talking about it, but how are we using nutrition and really actually getting to the bottom of supporting people in the workplace. Okay, so I'll make a start. On my first slide here. So focusing in on Mental Health Awareness Week, as Julie said, the focus this week has been stress, and I'm sure that you've had lots of things coming through to you over social media and from Unicorn as well about stress and understanding a lot more about it. And we talk about being stressed a lot, but what does that actually mean? Okay, so I just wanted to start with a couple of stats. So we know that 1 in 4 adults experience a common mental health problem each year. So common mental health problems include things like anxiety, depression, phobias, those are the kind of things. So they're feelings that we would naturally have, but because we're having them to such an extent, they're creating problems in our everyday lives. And that's what we would associate being a common mental health problem. Added on to that, 2/3 of us will experience a mental health problem in our lifetime. So that means that out of, if you think about how many people that's affecting, that's a huge number, that's a massive statistic of people who will suffer from a common mental health problem at some time in their lifetime. And I know for myself, there's been times when I've been more stressed than usual, and checking in with myself about what that means to me, what's happening to me when I'm feeling more stressed, and what do I need to do about it. Stress is a key factor for those mental health, for developing mental health problems. So stress is almost like the first part, and then where does that go to, and how does it develop into an actual mental health problem? In terms of for employers and for businesses, for health teams, what are we losing through stress? Well, we're losing a lot of time. We're losing time. So we know that mental health problems have accounted for, we've got the stat here, 15.8 million days lost in the workplace in 2016. So mental health problems, including anxiety and stress, were cited as number three in terms of the most common things that people were off work with. Number 1 was coughs and colds. And number 2 was musculoskeletal problems. So actually, but when we delve a little bit deeper, as I will be doing, and we start to see what's happening to the body in response to stress, we see that actually, although stress has only been cited as the 3rd problem, stress does also underline common cold and cough, because our immune system is repressed when we are in a stressed state. And also, it creates inflammation in the body, which can have a knock-on effect to our musculoskeletal health. So actually, we're in a situation where stress is not only just accounting for those the data that's collected, it's also accounting for other health problems as well. Okay, so what does food have to do with this? Well, there's so many studies coming out now about food. It's really important for us to consider that in terms of what we're doing to support ourselves. So studies show that making healthier eating choices improve well-being and they improve mood. Okay, and those who choose a well-balanced diet, and you've heard about this, everyone's heard about this every day, but what does it mean? If we choose a well-balanced diet, we're less likely to report symptoms of poor mental health. So when I'm talking to my clients about that, I very much talk about the macronutrients. I talk about fats, I talk about proteins, I talk about carbohydrates. And I really talk about where are we drawing those from and what are they doing for our bodies. It's not just about food as just to fill us up. It's food as nutrients, as fuel, as things that we need to keep us well and for all the body mechanisms to work really well together. So omega-3 I've mentioned here, really important. There's so many studies to come through to say omega-3 is particularly associated with cognitive function, with cellular health. So our omega-3 is coming from our oily fish, from our nuts and seeds, from our flax seeds, from our olive oil. And are we really putting enough of those things into our diets? Hence why a lot of people have to supplement now with omega-3, because we're just not getting enough through, and we do need those. Fruits and vegetables, everybody knows the lovely 5 a day that has made it out to public health. Well, we do know that it should be more than that, but that's what the message that's gone through publicly. And the reason for that is that our fruits and vegetables are full of phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals, everything that we need to be supporting us, our energy levels, our metabolism. Every process in the body requires those vitamins and minerals to work well. So it's not just a little, oh yeah, have them, it will do you a bit of good. They're essential for our health and to support our emotional health and our mental health. And then protein, of course. Protein is vital for making our hormones and for our neurotransmitters. So absolutely essential for our good moods and for triggering the chemicals that we need to make the neurotransmitters and the sort of the serotonin, the dopamine, all those things that we really need. Okay, so reducing stress can improve our immune health and digestion and will lead to reduced sickness and absence from work. So we want to reduce the stress, and in the next slide I want to talk a bit more about what stress is and what's happening to our bodies. So let's go back to basics. Stress. So it's a physiological response. It's a survival strategy that we have had since the beginning of time. So our ancestors were inbuilt with this wonderful strategy which kept us safe and actually enabled us to be here today. That's why we are still present, because in that time of life and death situation, our bodies are able to respond effectively, efficiently, so that we can either fight the oncoming danger or run away from it. So if you think way back to our ancestral times, when that would literally be, you know, a woolly mammoth or a saber-toothed lion, we would have to make that decision: are we going to fight this predator or are we going to run away? And it's a survival mechanism. Okay, so it was very much part of what we needed. What's happening today is that we're still having that same physiological response, but the stress has changed. Okay, so physiologically we haven't changed that much, but environmentally we've changed dramatically. Okay, so these days our bodies are responding to stress in the same way as they would have been doing for that woolly mammoth or saber-toothed lion, but we're responding to things like emails, webinars that we have to attend at lunchtime, crossing the road, family issues, financial problems, constantly responding, and we're constantly putting our bodies into this state of fight or flight. You've probably heard that term before. So when we are in our stress response, we are in this fight or flight, literally fight it or run away. And what's happening at the same time as that is that our body's unnecessary body functions start to slow down. So I'll just show you a little slide, the next one here, which is the body here, showing a bit more detail about what's happening when we're in that fight or flight or response or stress response. So our eyes dilate, our lungs, we start to deeper breathing, our heart beats faster, we're getting the blood pumped to our bodies. Oops, we're getting blood pumped around our bodies, ready to move, ready to respond, ready to deal with that immediate danger. Okay. On the backside of that is our immune system becomes repressed and our digestive system slows down. So we're not able to digest or absorb nutrients in the way that we should do when we're not in that state, and our immune system is obviously repressed. So those are the things that actually, if we were only responding to danger every now and then, as we were years and years ago, that would be okay. But because we have this constant exposure to stress and this constant release of the stress hormones, we are finding ourselves in a situation where our immune systems are very much repressed for long periods of time, and our digestive systems are not working as well as they should be doing. So we're getting into a state of real imbalance. And what also is happening is we're seeing an increase in inflammatory health conditions, chronic inflammatory health conditions, which are happening in response to chronic exposure to stress. Okay, so that's what's happening to us physiologically. On the other side of that, on the flip side, we have our autonomic nervous system. And when we're in our flight or fight mode, we're using our sympathetic nervous system or in sympathetic activity. On the flip side of that is our parasympathetic nervous system, and we call that, I call it rest and digest, and that's the flip side to it. So we're either in fight or flight, or we're in rest and digest. So when we're in our fight or flight mode, we're not able to rest and digest our food. So I don't know about you, but if you've ever had a long day in the office where or long day running from meeting to meeting to meeting, you might have grabbed a sandwich on the go. By the end of the day, your stomach it's griping, you're in pain, you've got some bloating going on, you're feeling uncomfortable, and that's very much to do with the fact that you haven't been able to digest the food that you've eaten throughout the day because you've been in that stress response. Okay, so it's very, very important to enable ourselves to, when we're eating, sit down and enable our bodies to digest that food properly. Okay, and that can be quite a difficult thing to do in the workplace when we've got fast-paced workplaces, particularly if we're working for the NHS and we're on the wards. That's very difficult. But we need to find a time as employers to work with our teams to enable them to have that time out. Okay, so I've just put a few little pointers together here about how we can encourage rest and digest. Now, I'm not saying we want the staff to be resting and digesting all day, but we want them to be able to take time out, enjoy their meal, digest their food, and then come back to their work focused and ready to work. What you see is people who are eating their lunch at their desks. I'm sure some of you are doing that now. I'm sure some of you are thinking, yeah, I'm going to watch this up now, but I'm going to have my lunch at the same time. Multitasking, doing something else, and it's a constant use of that stress response, but at the same time trying to eat means that we're just not absorbing nutrients as we should be doing. Okay, so trying to encourage time away from the desk at lunchtime, eating together, so social eating, that's about connecting with people, and that's one of the NHS 5 ways to wellbeing, which NHS workers will understand and know, and hopefully that's got out there to the public as well. But connecting actually really supports our mental health and our emotional health. So I found that for me, that was one of the hardest things when I led a staff team in the NHS, and I would be very much one of those people that sat at my desk and eating my lunch at the same time as trying to answer some emails, because obviously you just want to get through things. And it was only when I started to actually remove myself from that situation and take myself out, away from my computer and away from my phone, and encouraging my team to do the same with me, that I began to realise actually the knock-on effect of what that had. So we sat down together. It might have only been 10-15 minutes, but we could sometimes get half an hour. And we would be able to talk about things that were happening outside of work and connecting with each other in a different way. And then that enables us to have easier conversations about things that were happening in work, because we were building those relationships. We were sitting around food, enjoying food together, and we were digesting well. And then I'd go back to my computer, and actually I found I was a lot more focused and ready for the afternoon, or I'd approach a problem in a different way. So very much so, it's about trying to encourage those kind of times within the working day to take time out. Considering the environment, is there somewhere to go that's a nice place for you to go, for your colleagues, for yourself, for your staff teams to go and sit? And if not, can you create that somehow? Mindful eating, there's a lot of work around mindfulness, and I know Unicorn and Julie do a lot of work around mindfulness. And mindful eating is particularly pertinent around just thinking about what we're eating and not just gobbling it down and not really thinking about what we're putting into our bodies. And key with this is role modelling, so being the role model. I think this is really important. If you are a manager or you're a team lead, it's modelling that it is okay to leave your desk at lunchtime and sit down and digest your food. It's okay to do that, and then you will enable other people to feel that they can do that too. If you're not doing that, like I didn't used to, my staff team didn't do it either. They were like, oh, you know, Charlotte's not doing it, well, we eat at my desk. But the reality is we need to be encouraging those healthier behaviours. Okay, so going back to what we were talking about with the rest and digest and what happens to our bodies and the physiological response, something that I want to talk about a little bit is adrenal fatigue. So when we're in that fight or flight mode, it's our little adrenal glands at the top of our kidneys are responsible for releasing cortisol hormones and adrenaline, those corticosteroid hormones. And they work really efficiently, but they're working really hard for us at the moment. They're constantly having to release cortisol for us. And it gets to a point where they go, do you know what? I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I'm done with you. I'm not responding anymore. And that is when we get to a point where we call it adrenal fatigue, and it's where people absolutely flatline. And that's where we get to, you know, we're in a real distress situation now. People tend, and will be off sick, long-term sick. So we want to get to a point where we recognise those warning signs prior to that happening to prevent that kind of a complete adrenal breakdown. And mental health breakdowns too are inextricably linked together. So we want to stop that happening. So it's keying into some of those early warning signs. So have a look at this that I put in front of you. Is this you? Do you find it difficult to get up in the morning? And do you feel that you have feelings of fatigue throughout the day and then higher energy levels in the evening? Okay, so in a healthy person, cortisol should be highest in the morning and should slowly start to decrease throughout the day and go down, so that when we get to the evening, we can start to really relax and we can prepare ourselves for a restful sleep. Okay, so it's about having our hormones in a lovely rhythm where our circadian rhythm is really good, we're sleeping well at night time, and our cortisol levels are high. We wake up in the morning, we're refreshed, we're ready to go, our cortisol's high, and then we just slowly have this curvature throughout the day. When I have a client and they come to me and say, I just cannot get up in the morning, I'm so exhausted, and then I'm tired throughout the day, and then I seem to pick up a little bit in the evening. I'm thinking, there's a problem here with cortisol, because, if you've got that, you've got low cortisol in the morning, you've got higher in the evening, those cortisol levels are out of sync, and there's something going on with the adrenals. So that's a number one warning sign. Next thing, your temper, your mood, difficulty handling stress. So situations that in the past you might have been able to handle really well suddenly are becoming more stressful for you. Being asked to do something which previously you would have found quite within your comfort zone suddenly becomes, I just don't think I can do that. It's just too much. It's like a snapping point. I can't do it. So you find it more difficult to handle everyday stresses. You've perhaps got a shorter temper and you're more irritable. You're responding to people with emotion rather than reasoning. And you're beginning to think, God, I'm just really snapping. I don't know what's happening. I'm snapping at the kids. I'm snapping at the parents. I'm snapping at my partner. I'm snapping at my work colleagues. What is that about? That's another warning sign. Things are not going well. You need to recognise that you need to take some time out. Craving salty foods. Now, this is an interesting one for me, obviously, as a nutritional therapist. When people tell me that they really have a craving for salt, it makes me think, there's something happening here. So as well as releasing cortisol, our adrenal glands release something called aldosterone, which works with our kidneys to regulate our fluid and mineral excretion and levels in the body. So when our adrenals stop producing as much of this aldosterone, we start to excrete more minerals through our urine. So minerals, potassium, magnesium, and sodium. So when we're excreting those, we need to be replenishing them, and our body will crave them. So our body will crave the sodium through salt, and magnesium is one of those that a lot of people come to me in stress. I'm like, we need to be putting more magnesium because you're excreting too much and you're using a lot through all the different processes in stress. So if you've got a craving for salty foods, that could be an indication of that. It can be other things as well, but that can be an indication. Overuse of stimulants like caffeine and sugar. So yeah, I mean, a lot of us enjoy a coffee in the morning. I'm sure many of us enjoy a piece of cake or a biscuit when we can. But it's one that it becomes a crutch. When it becomes, I cannot get through this day without that coffee. I need to have some sugar at mid-morning. I need to have some sugar mid-afternoon because it's the only way I'm going to get through this day. A key sign that there's issues with your adrenal glands, with stress response, and with blood sugar regulation, which I'm going to cover in more detail shortly. So those are the key things that I'm looking for, as well as frequent illnesses. Obviously, I mentioned before how your immune system is lowered. You're more susceptible to catching the coughs and colds and less able to get rid of them, to fight them off, okay? So those are all the warning signs. So you can have a look at those yourself and think, is that me? Some of those are the warning signs. And it's really important that you're checking in with yourself. And thinking, yeah, actually, I'm too stressed at the moment. I need to take some time out. I need to take a couple of days off, or I need to find a way of balancing the workload and working with my colleagues to be able to do that. And it's important you support your staff teams to do the same, that it's okay to have those feelings and then be able to work through how we're going to support somebody with it, rather than going to the point where they're off work sick because we've not caught it in time, and now they're off for a long period of time, and you've got to deal with the staff absence and cover and all those other issues. Okay. So some of supporting adrenal health, we talked a little bit about work-life balance, so trying to get that in place there. But if you're responsible for well-being in the workplace, I know that there's lots of people bringing some key initiatives into the workplace now, which is great for staff. So yoga at lunchtime, mindfulness, meditation, really nice lifestyle things that can help that work-life balance a little bit. Encouraging people to go home on time, not take work home, not responding to emails late at night. If you're a leader, again, thinking about when the time that you send an email, you might write it, but don't send it at that time, if it's late at night, because you're giving a message that there's a feeling that people should be responding at that late into the evening, which we don't want people to be doing. Blood sugar balance, I'm going to talk about more. Consider the use and availability of stimulants in the workplace. Okay, so what is available for staff? Okay, so caffeine, coffee, tea, what's available in the kitchen, what's available for them to be having? Do you have a table in the office place where there's biscuits, where there's chocolate? Do staff bring in cakes for their birthdays? If you've got a large organisation, that's a lot of birthdays, that's a lot of cake. And it's thinking about what kind of staff team do you want to have? Do you want to have a focused, concentrated, ready to work group, or do you want to have a lethargic, slow, unfocused irritable staff group. And it, depending on what you want, it's thinking, well, what am I going to feed? What are we feeding people with? And it's not about telling people what to do, but it's about having things, it's about availability. So if you want people to be focused and looking after themselves well, maybe swapping some of those biscuits for fruit, fresh fruit, having nuts and seeds available, making it look attractive, thinking about the kitchen, what's available. There's some really nice herbal teas, green tea, not just some horrible little box put up at the back of the cupboard. It's really thinking about how would I want my staff teams to be eating and feeling, and what's available to them, okay? And do the two actually work in sync together, or are they sort of telling different messages, okay? And then hydration, absolutely fundamental. The brain's made up of about 85% water. We need to be keeping ourselves hydrated. The slightest bit of hydration reduces concentration. So we need to be making sure that everybody is drinking water. So where is the water available? Is it, how easy it is for people to access? If you're a big corporation, maybe thinking about giving staff water bottles, that they've got them on their desks, because actually it's about bringing our awareness to something. And the more aware we are of something, the more likely we are to engage with it. So I'm just, on that note, I'm going to have a drink of my water. And hopefully some of you will do the same and keep hydrated. And straight away I can feel my eyes getting a bit brighter again. My brain feels a bit more alert. The water helps. Okay. So moving on to blood sugar regulation. So blood sugar regulation is a key element, and something that people talk a lot about, and it's about our energy levels and also our mood. So in front of you, what you've got is a slide which shows a lovely green line that goes to really nice level blood sugar regulation throughout the day, and that's what we want to achieve. And then we also have this red sort of roller coaster line like this. And what we've got here is if someone in the morning would maybe they wake up and they're tired, so they think I need a coffee, or I need a pastry with sugar, or I need some white toast with some jam, or a sugary cereal, or I might have a breakfast bar, a healthy breakfast bar that's full of sugar, or I might have a healthy breakfast yogurt which is full of sugar. And so immediately we get hit with that, we get a rise in our blood, in the blood glucose. But because we get quite immediate hit from that high sugar, that refined carbohydrate, we then get a real dip down, because the insulin is released from the pancreas to draw the glucose out of the blood, so we can try and regulate our bodies and our systems. But with that, we get this crash, okay? So then you go, oh, I'm tired again, okay, I need something else. I'm going to have a coffee. I'm going to have some biscuits with that as well. So a little bit of a hit and then straight crash down again. Then it's lunchtime. What I'm going to have for lunch? I'm going to have maybe a white potato, a really high glycemic load food. So it means that it turns to sugar very quickly in the blood, leading to that peak, and then you get a real slump. So you might have a white bread sandwich or something of those sort of choices. So then what you find is in the mid-afternoon you have this real slump of energy where people are just, on the floor. And actually there's been studies recently to suggest that the time that people are least productive is between 3 and 4 in the afternoon. No kidding. I'm sure you all recognise that with your staff teams. You go out and see people and they're there kind of, pretending to send an email or spending a long time over that, and people are on the floor at that time, okay? And yes, we do have lower cortisol in the afternoon, but there's no need for that absolute slump. We need to be thinking this is where blood sugar control comes absolutely into its own, and I work with clients around this all the time. Really simple things that can make a big difference. So going back to those macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats and proteins, really important to start combining those food groups. You can see here are the peak with carbohydrates turning to sugar, in the green curvature. Then the yellow one is our protein, so 50% of proteins will turn to glucose, but much slower. And then fats, where only 10% of fats will turn to glucose, and then you get a really nice level line with fats. And combining those food groups together can really help that blood sugar response and that blood sugar control, and really reduce the chances of having that massive slump in the afternoon. That hit that low energy levels, when low productivity, which we do not want to be seeing as employers. You want to be trying to make sure that you're maintaining that productivity throughout the day. So trying to combine those food groups with every snack and meal is really important. Okay, and I often talk to my clients about what's on your plate, and really visualizing the plate and thinking about where am I getting my carbohydrate from and what is it. Carbohydrate is a massive group, and we often think of it as white bread, pasta, potatoes, those rice, those kind of things. But actually, vegetables are carbohydrates, and starchy vegetables, which are great fillers, things like butternut squash, sweet potato, much lower glycemic index, glycemic load, but giving us some of those key nutrients that we need for energy. Okay, fats and proteins. So where we're getting them from? So proteins, one thing about oily fish, lean meats, beans and pulses, eggs, and again our fats, that omega-3, the avocados, the nuts and seeds, the olive oil, those key things that we need to be having on a daily basis and with each of our meals to support our blood sugar response. Okay, so I like people to visualize what they're eating. You can have a think about what you're eating now. Some of you probably eating your lunch or maybe having it afterwards, and thinking how, we're really in a nation where we're very carb heavy. We need carbohydrates, but we're having too many at the moment, the majority of us. And it's really thinking about ensuring that I'm putting some protein with every snack and meal and fats with every snack and meal to support that blood sugar response. Okay, so if we're able to balance blood sugar levels, we can balance our mood. So choosing whole grains and complex carbohydrates, proteins and good fats, eating regularly, avoiding refined sugars and trying to choose natural sugars only, so fresh fruit, dried fruit, raw honey, those kind of natural sugars for our sweetness. Avoiding the caffeine, which has the same responses as stress does on our adrenal glands, so it triggers the body to produce cortisol. So just adding to the problem by having caffeine and alcohol. So these are all messages that are out there every day, but it's really about trying to think about why is it so important, and why is it important for me? What's important for me about this? And think about your own behaviours. The alcohol, yeah, probably it's Friday night, and a lot of you, I'm sure, will go home and have a glass of wine tonight. And fine, but it's the ones that are sneaking into every day, and it's the impact and the connection with alcohol and stimulants to have on our mental health and our well-being. And it's all about trying to get to that balance. Okay, it's not about telling people what to do, it's about trying to educate and putting key messages out there about why we're doing things, and that they'll actually make you feel better. I've put on here cinnamon and chromium. They're two supplements that I tend to use for people who are having a problem with glucose control. Cinnamon, obviously, you can just sprinkle onto breakfast and into smoothies. Chromium we get from a wide range of vegetables and whole grains, but sometimes I supplement if I feel that a client has particular problems with that. Okay, so quick recap. I know we're coming towards the end of today's webinar. Thanks for sticking with me. So first of all, stress response suppresses the immune system, remember that, and our body's ability to digest. So when we're stressed, we're not able to use those key systems as well as we should be doing. So we don't want to be in that constant stress mode. We need to find times to come into rest and digest. We need to find times to really bring ourselves down to a relaxed state. Prolonged stress can lead to inflammatory conditions, poor mental health, and eventually adrenal fatigue. So we want to, the prolonged stress, that constant stress, we need to find ways of stopping. So it's turning the phone off, it's turning the computers off at a certain time, and encouraging staff to do the same. Noticing these changes in behaviour, so remember I did the checklist, noticing those changes at an early stage can help us to address those problems and really trying to stop them from getting to a point where we're off work sick. And food choices can have a huge part to play in this, and that's really what my interest is in terms of helping groups and individuals to really think about what they're putting into their bodies, and having a bit of fun with it. It's not about, I've got to be this and it's got to be. I want people to really think about the good things that they're putting in, not about taking out, it's about what we're putting in. So what next? So hopefully you've enjoyed today and you've got something out of it. And you thought more about those connections between our well-being and stress levels and the food that we're putting in and the goodness that we're able to provide for ourselves. And what I can do is obviously do some staff training with your teams. We can do it face-to-face, or we can do more live webinars like this, if that's easier to access. I'm also interested in one-to-one working, so if you'd like to make that available for your staff teams, for your employees, to actually get some personalised nutrition if they need to have that, in the same way that they might need counselling or support through other health conditions. Nutrition is absolutely fundamental to that and plays a huge supportive role to any of those problems. We can do some on-site masterclasses, so if you're in charge of wellbeing, having me to do some smoothie workshops or meal planning and preparation, so people are much more educated around what to be choosing for breakfast, for their lunch, and how to put meals together so they've got those macronutrients and micronutrients. And we're also going to be introducing a 5-day challenge. So that will be coming really soon. And that's going to be about working with your employees and supporting them to engage with some of the key things that I've talked about today, and challenging themselves to really engage with some of those positive, healthy behaviors